Hi everyone, this is Noor, the host of the IB Odyssey podcast, and today we're going to be discussing about the MYP 5 externally assessed personal project. Now this episode or this topic will have two parts. This is part 1 of 2, and today we're going to be discussing three different things. We're going to be discussing the criteria A, B, and C, so we have a better understanding of what the report is actually asking us. We're also going to go through the process journal so we have a great idea of what we should incorporate as evidence for whatever we're talking about in the report. And lastly, we're going to be discussing the ultimate report writing. So when you write your report, how should you phrase things, or what should you mention in order to get as great marks as you can? So this is the part 1 of a part 2 series, you can say. And the second one is going to be basically just tips. The tips will be revolving around what you should and what you should not do to get as many marks as you can. Once that episode comes out, you will have a better understanding of the difference between this episode and the other one. So let's start off with the personal project objective A, or as you can say, the complete report checklist. So starting off with criteria A, this is where you discuss your learning goal and your personal interest. So your learning goal is basically something that you have to explain what you want to learn by completing this project. This is a crucial aspect of the report because the report is revolving around a personal growth, a personal journey. By the end, when you're at criteria C, you want to discuss where you were at the start of the project and where you are now and how you've grown. So that's kind of where you want to kick things off with. You have to identify what initially sparked your interest in this topic and explain the connection between your learning goal and your personal interest. You also have to describe what makes your goal personal through your experiences and interest. For example, my personal project report was to make a cookbook for people with diabetes and lactose intolerance. I chose diabetes because I'm a Pakistani, and over here a lot of this disease is basically very widely popular. So I wanted to do that for my own community, but I also wanted to discuss lactose intolerance because at the time of my birth I had lactose intolerance and it gave me a lot of health issues. And that's kind of how I connected my personal interest with my learning goal. So basically, next thing you have to do is describe what makes your goal personal through your experiences and interest. As I just said, you can make a great connection, do something you're passionate about. That's really what the IB, in my opinion, wants to see. Where you started and where you end off, but with something you're truly passionate about. So next thing would be discuss what knowledge and skills you had before you begin this process. You could basically identify what you already knew about this topic based on subjects you take or classes or courses you've done. You could also identify what skills you already have and how they will help you achieve your goal. Lastly, you could basically identify what you already knew. You can also explain that if you've learned something outside of school, then you should definitely go ahead and mention that. This part is optional, but I don't think it will hurt you if you write this. You could connect your goal and your global context to the real world through research, like why does this project matter, in what ways is it significant and or worthy of studying. So this is something that can really help you get those extra marks because ideally you should be aiming for 20 plus. So the grades for the personal project are out of 24. I got a 23 out of 24, which is of course the highest 7, but you should really aim for anything above a 20. That would really help. So what we just covered is criteria A strand 1 and some of the evidences, and we will discuss this in the process journal bit too, but this is kind of something I still want to discuss as we go along. Some of the evidences you can use for this particular strand would be brainstorms, planning sheets, proposal panels. Something that I personally really would suggest is a mind map, a KWL chart, and a list or a diagram of your interests related to your learning goal. These are really good ways of showing what you're trying to say, like the information through diagrams and things. These will help you score great points because one, this is a requirement. Two, they also give you the information in a very organized manner, so it looks really good when you kind of go through this. So I would definitely suggest go with the KWL chart, the mind map, a list or diagram. You can just not go wrong with them. They're classics in a way. Next up is product goal and success criteria. This is criteria A, strand 2. This is where you have to state an intended product and develop appropriate success criteria for your product. Now, this is also another crucial part. The thing with criteria A is this is the lengthiest, or kind of can be the lengthiest, because this has the most strands. B and C only have 2 strands each. So when you're doing criteria A is the foundation of your whole personal project. If you kind of mess this up, your level can suffer a bit. So really put a lot of attention over here, because you're setting the grounds for whatever you're going to develop in criteria B and C. So definitely take this with a lot of attention. Over here, you need to develop your product goal, which is explaining what you want to do or what you want to make by completing this project. You have to develop the criteria that is specific, rigorous, realistic, and also testable. So what you can do is develop the criteria that are, that's directly related to the product. For example, like if you want to create something, then research would definitely be one of the criterias that you're bound to incorporate. So that's an example. You can develop the criteria that measures the quality of the goal. Explain and justify the criteria based on the transfer of research to the product. So this is optional, but this is also, again, whenever something's optional, might as well do it. It would probably really help you score better. So some of the evidences that are really good for this would be brainstorms again. You could do a product criteria table. You could list them down and then explain why this is applicable to your project. That's kind of what I did. And you can draft and plan your success criteria, kind of similar, but then you just add another column in which you talk about where this is being implied and why it is probably needed for your particular research. You could also do research notes that support your success criteria. So what you can do is you can make a research-based table, like excerpts of articles you've read. For example, I had to make a cookbook, right? So what I did was I searched up how to make a cookbook, and I would quote the article based on the success criteria, like aesthetics, function, form. These are kind of this product criteria, success criteria that you should be aiming to kind of incorporate into your product or your project or whatever you're trying to make. The last strand of criteria A is based on planning. So this basically asks to present a clear, a detailed plan for achieving the product and its associated success criteria. So how you're going to do this is you're going to include your evidences of planning. This could be timelines, calendars, Gantt charts, or even, tools and strategies that you're using. You can also present a timeline for achieving the product goal. I would suggest this. It's really kind of the best way to go about it. You could include your success criteria and the goals. You could do details about specific and personal examples of planning tools. You could present, again, a project timeline. That works great. You could also include both short-term and long-term planning, and you can break it down step by step. I think the more the detailed your evidence is, the better it is for, getting your report examined, because the person who's checking your report didn't do all the work. Whenever you're giving an exam or writing a report, write it in such a way that you're explaining this person by step to step. Imagine they have no idea what's going on. And in this case, they probably don't, because it's something that is unique It's something you're doing based on your interest. So do explain everything to them. That would really help you. Also, when you're citing your work, make sure it's an APA. And some of the evidences that you can use, as we just discussed, would be also to-do lists, Gantt charts, long-term plans, annotated timelines, short-term plans with details. Things like these, timeline with tasks. I feel like that is the best way to go about it. It's showing if you did do it or did not do it and how long it took you. So that's definitely great. Go through that. Next up is the criteria B. So criteria B, strand 1, would include your ATL skills and your learning goal. In strand 1, you have to explain how the ATL skills were applied or are going to be applied and how they're going to help you achieve the learning goal. So over here, you first identify your ATL skill. This could be research, communication, whatever you think suits best to your project. And you have to discuss how this was developed throughout the process of achieving the learning goal. You could choose the ATL skills and their clusters. So basically, if you want to choose communication skills, you could do interaction or language. If you want to do social ATL skills, you could do collaboration. For research, it could be media literacy, information literacy. So basically, every skill has like sub-skills, you can consider it like that. So it really helps give your project a very holistic point of view when you discuss that. Oh, okay, I was doing research skills, but in particular media literacy. That really helps the examiner to really understand exactly where you were going with this. So definitely do that. You can just search up ATL skills IB online and you will find them out. You have to explain how the ATL skills were applied to help achieve the learning goal. You have to justify the strengths of the ATL skills chosen, the limitations of the ATL skills that you chose, and how these ATL skills help to extend your knowledge about your learning goal. So that's definitely very important. Do work on that for sure. Okay, so next up, we have criteria B, strand 2. Over here, you're going to talk about your ATL skills and product goal this time. You're going to discuss how the ATL skills were, developed or helped achieve the product goal. Basically the same thing as strand 1, but you have to kind of do this with the product goal this time. So you literally have to do the same thing. So I'm not going to go over that because I just did. And one thing about this particular criteria is that the evidences are, of course, example based, but they're also interchangeable. You can use timelines, Gantt charts, bullet journals for self-management. You can also use helping others as kind of an evidence or example for social skills. Mind maps, flowcharts, decision tables, they come under thinking skills. You can use print or electronic media to kind of show this. You can also do like an inquiry into a series of questions for research skills. So there are a lot of examples. You can definitely search them up, and I'm sure your school will provide you of sample reports. I will talk about sample reports in the tips podcast episode, which is going to be part 2, so do wait for that. These evidences are really great to help score better, but one that I'm really going to suggest, especially for research skills, is source evaluation. You can use the SWOT method, the CRAP method. There are a lot of evaluation methods, so you should definitely use them. You're basically going to be assessing the, like for example, SWOT analysis is all about success, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So if you do that, you're getting a really good idea of kind of the successes, the limitations, things like that of your project. So definitely go for that if you chose research skill. Okay, so our last criteria is criteria C. Now this has 2 strands as criteria B, but the evidences aren't interchangeable. Criteria C, strand 1, it asks you about the impact of the project. So basically you have to explain the impact of the project on yourself. So this will be, done through demonstrating a deeper knowledge and understanding of your chosen topic. You have to use your evidences to justify how you gain this new knowledge. And other things you have to do would include, you have to identify and explain how you as a student has developed more as a learner. You can use this by incorporating the IB learner profile. You could also discuss the strengths and weaknesses academically and personally, and in reference to the process of completing the personal project where you think you lacked, where you think you didn't like, what you could have done better if you were to do it again. Things sort of like that, because criteria C is literally reflecting. That is what this criteria is about. And I think the best part of this is you should be honest. They won't cut marks if you say that one of my ATL skills were self-management, and I actually didn't manage myself, my time, my resources that well. It's all right, you can be honest about it. That's, I think, what they're looking for. It's sometimes you kind of flunk some things, and that's okay. In this case, they're looking for your honesty, and they're looking for where you ended up and what you realize. If you even realize that I have a weak strength but I'm willing to work on it, even that is a really good thing. So again, you have to just reflect about your project and how the experience of the project was for you. So again, you have to discuss the strategies of improving the quality of the project, the challenges you faced, and the solutions to those challenges. If you just made a change, a total new change because you couldn't do something, then discuss that. Discuss the possible impact of the learning goal, possible impact of the product goal, and also consider how this project could help you benefit in future learning. This could be when you're in DP or something. So again, this is great. And again, this new part is optional, but what you can do is you could demonstrate a deeper knowledge and understanding through the connection to the global context, and you can use evidences to justify new knowledge of the global context that you gained. So again, for this, I would suggest you do the KWL chart. The KWL chart has 3 columns. It starts with what I already know, what I want to know, and what I learned. So again, remember how we were talking about in criteria A that they're looking for growth. So this is where you kind of show that this particular thing you already knew, but this is what you wanted to know, and then this is what you learned. So you fill out these 3 columns, and I think this is absolutely an amazing evidence for criteria C part 1, strand 1. This is literally what they're asking you. And again, you can do a 3-column table for challenges you were faced, the strategies used to overcome the challenge, and the outcome. That's also something that's really useful. The last strand is criteria C, strand 2, where you're evaluating your products. So this is where you have to do self-assessment. You have to basically make a table. You can make a table. This is what I did. I listed down my product criteria. I gave a description of it. I then talked about how did I fulfill my product criteria and how did I not fulfill my product criteria. So again, strengths and weaknesses. That's something that's going to help you score better, of course, because you're being honest that, okay, if I did this and it worked, but if I did this, it would have worked better. So there's always room for improvement, and that's literally what they're kind of looking for here. If you made any changes, you can also discuss that. For example, I was going to have 3 sections in my cookbook, but I ended up only making 2 because of time limits. So I definitely discussed that in my criteria C strand 2. Next up, you have to discuss the peer evaluation, supervisor and coordinator reviews, and expert opinions and reviews. What you can do for this is what I did. I sent it to my target audience. I made a Google form. I asked them a couple of questions. I made some questions that were more pie chart based, and some were short written answers. So you can do those. You can put screenshots of the Google form into your report, and you can talk about it and elaborate. What was the question? Why did you ask it? Was the response fairly positive, fairly negative? That's more peer review. If you want to do an expert review, you can do that. For example, I could have sent my report to a nutritionist and I could have, or my cookbook, and I could have asked them, do you think this is useful and you think that information is accurate? So that could be an example of an expert review. And again, optional, but you can make the connection of the product with the community, how it's beneficial for the society, and the efforts to make the product publicly available. I personally suggest this so much because this is really hitting a bullseye. Like, this is the best part of it all. Like, you're talking about how you made this product and how it could help the community it was targeting. Because I had a very niche target in mind, which is people with lactose intolerance and diabetes. I didn't go over heart diseases or, infections, or, well, infections don't have to do anything with food. Not that I know of, because I'm not a trained nutritionist. But, things like that, you could definitely discuss that. And you could also discuss that if you had the resources, you could make, for example, my cookbook, right? You could make it available on like Amazon or Kindle or whatever. So that is something that when you're making your products or, whatever, and you're writing your report, you should definitely keep this in mind and don't treat it as optional. That's just my, advice. Don't do that. Whatever it says, just go with it because it will help you score better, trust me. Okay, now talking about the evidences. You can do meeting with your supervisor notes if you arranged a meeting with them through email. Send a screenshot of that. If you wanted to share your product and you ask people to share it around, then you can send a screenshot of that. Like, you message people in a group chat, hey, I made this thing, this is the link, could you forward this to other people? For social ATL skills, that would be great. You can also do self-evaluation of the product, which I also discussed earlier, the success and the limitations or failures, because it gives a really good overview of your product, your self-analysis, product analysis actually. So this concludes the first part of this podcast, which was focusing on the criteria. Next up, we're going to be discussing the process journal. So we've already kind of gone over it a bit, but I'm just going to go over some that I think will be very beneficial for you guys. So first off, you can make a mind map where you're basically just brainstorming ideas and how you want your cookbook or whatever. Like, for example, it's my cookbook, but if you want to make it, go ahead, I guess. But with the mind map, you're just discussing the ATL skills you're going to use, the product criteria, the product itself, the timeline, the research, and this includes not only the product but also the report. For the timeline, it can be, for example, till late January, I want to research about whatever. So this is how you can go about it. You can also make this thing called the compass points, where it's basically north, west, east, south, but it's actually what you need to know, what you're excited about, suggestions for moving forward, and what you're worrisome about. So you write a couple of sentences for each of the 4 points, and you just discuss that. Like, for example, going forward with this, I'm really excited about this thing, or suggestions for going forward with this. I have this product, and to make it better, I can do this, or what you need to research on, things along the lines. A decisions table, next up, is what we're going to discuss for a bit, and I think this is very useful for criteria A especially. This is where you discuss things you really like. For example, my decisions table, I made 3 options in a column, right? I discussed music, cooking, and embroidery. Then I discussed the advantages and disadvantages of pursuing this for my report. For example, for music, it's like, I love music. I'm passionate about learning music, how production is done. But if I were to make a product related to music, I would probably make something like an album or an EP or a song, right? But I don't have the skills to produce music, or along something like that is something that you can state. So that's why I kind of didn't go forward with that option. So I think this really helps. at the end of this, you're supposed to kind of pick one of how many ever choices you had, and then you write like a paragraph justifying your reasons for selecting this topic. So that's kind of how this evidence would work, and I do think this is really important. This kind of links with another evidence, which is inspiration. So you have to write your inspiration in criteria A. You have to write, what was the inspiration behind my project, and why, or well, this creating this product, and why am I doing it? What was the reason? Like, for example, my inspiration was that when I was younger, I had a lot of health issues because my parents didn't really know that I had lactose intolerance till they changed my doctor. So, I kind of empathize with people who are recently being diagnosed with such a health condition. So I want to make their life a bit easier. So, that's my inspiration. So you have to discuss yours, because it will help put everything into perspective that, okay, they want to maybe make a video game or something for the personal project. Why do they want to do that? It will help really make things, more clear to the person who's examining it. Again, the KWL chart, I've already discussed this in detail, so I'm not going to go through that. You can also make a list of topics, things that you're passionate about, things that challenge you, things that are your hobbies, things that you're curious about, and you can talk about them as well. One thing that is, you have to do it, trust me, it will help you score so well, is a flow chart of your goals. Basically, you discuss your personal project, you discuss what is your topic, and then you connect it with your learning goal and your product goal. So just make a flowchart of that. It's fairly simple. I think that is really helpful. Also, another very helpful and a really good scoring evidence is product timeline with phases. So it can be like phase 1, research, and then expectations, what do you want to achieve. Then you can also put a due date like March 2024 or whatever, right? So this one is great, and also it'll help you keep yourself in track, because okay, phase 1 was research, phase 2 is developing the product, like making it by hand or whatever, phase 3 is like getting it published, or whatever you want to do. So that is very useful. Do make a product timeline with phases and a due date, of course. That is excellent. You can also do an interview or survey with a professional. You can do communication with your supervisor, source evaluation, like SWOT analysis. You could do an interview plan where you just plan out your interview. You make a form, for example, or if you go and meet someone in person, you put pictures of you and them. That can be your evidences. Your research plan can be a great evidence. You discuss the source, you give the link, the writer's name, date of publication, the content and examples that you're using. That I think is absolutely great and very useful. Definitely do use it. I mean, you're going to be researching somewhat anyway, right? So do use that. I do think it will be very beneficial for everyone. Okay, so that's the end with the process journal. We've already been through this with, the criteria. So I hope you guys have an understanding of which evidence you should use with which criteria and which strand. So I hope that is simplified. Okay, yay, we're on to the last bit of this podcast episode, which is writing, the ultimate report. In my opinion, you have to really phrase things. Okay, the writing the report bit is like an art of its own. You really have to structure everything, discuss everything in such a manner that you're really giving off the information with as efficiency as possible. The reason why there's so many evidences, tables, mind maps, they're all mentioned so that the examiner can really understand what you're doing. And so can you, obviously, if you make a timeline, you're going to hopefully stick by it, right? So that is something that's a really crucial point. But another crucial aspect of the report is how to write it. So starting off with the requirements, you have to ensure that the written part of the report is clearly legible. Each page must have a minimum of 11 font size and 2 centimeter margins. Your evidence should be presented in images and they should be clearly visible. I'm not sure if the size matters, but of course the picture should be really clear. So audio and video that you record, they must be submitted in real time. The bibliography of the research you do is supposed to be in APA formatting, and it is a doc that goes separately. It is not included in the page limit. Now there is a page limit which is 15 pages. So your whole report needs to be done and dusted in 15 pages. Bibliography goes into another document. And don't add a title page because it will count towards those 15 pages, so you're just wasting a page. You don't really need to do that, but you do need to clearly write down in bold text what the criteria and the strand you're going to be discussing. So that's important. As we've discussed earlier, the personal project objectives are, your learning goals and your product goals, and it includes the planning bit, the ATL skills, and the reflection. This is how criteria A, B, and C are kind of divided. So let's start off with how to write criteria A. Also, a lot of this we've already discussed. Also, I know you guys will think this is very repetitive, but one thing I want to clear is that this particular, thing is the order of how everything should be written down. So I'm gonna kind of also try to speed run this because, again, we've already discussed this in pretty great depth. So criteria A, strand 1, it's learning goal and personal interest. So you discuss how a personal interest led to this topic. Maybe it could be, a personal goal, a hobby, a passion. Then you connect that between your learning goal and your project goal. Next up is inspiration. Who was your inspiration? Someone who's your role model, someone from your family, your friends, something you went through. That is next. After that, you discuss your beyond school experiences. Could be some certificate you've done, a course, a workshop, seminar, webinar you've attended. And after that, in the same paragraph, you can discuss subject-specific knowledge. So if you want to, you want to make a painting, that's your personal project. You want to make a painting about, something. It could be anything in the world. Well, you can definitely incorporate it with design and art. That is a great way to go about it. I'm not going to be discussing the evidences because we've already done that. But criteria strand 2 would be product goal and product description. So you discuss the product goal statement, how it's different from your product ideas, reasons for selecting this particular product, the skill and knowledge required. You can also discuss a brief introduction to the product where you just discuss, the product criteria, how you're using form, aesthetic, function, things along the lines to really develop your product. Next up is the product criteria. This is where you discuss design specifications, explanation of the specifications, justification with the help of research. So that's what's required over here. And again, really do this with a lot of focus because this is a very crucial part because it's laying a foundation for the whole thing. So do not, just kind of, go through a random, really do put in a lot of effort with this because, again, this is setting the tone for your whole project. And I know that might sound a bit scary if you're an MYP 4 or starting the MYP 5, but believe me, this is so important. Now, on to criteria A, strand 3. This is your product timeline. You discuss 2 different timelines here. For the report and for the product, they're different. So for the report, you're going to mention the project timeline and product timeline. You're going to discuss how you will create your product. You'll discuss different sections of the timeline and their importance. Again, remember the phases that discuss. This comes here. You can also make a connection with the product criteria. And again, very similar to the product timeline, but it's a little more tedious in a way. You have to design a step-by-step guide or to-do list of things you're going to do to make your product, or phases you're going to go through. You have to give description of each of the steps. You have to also discuss the materials or the tools that are needed, and you have to make a connection with the product criteria. And if you have any feedback, if you send a form out to someone, your target audience first, then you also take screenshots and you apply them here. Next up, criteria B. This is where your skills are applied again. You're going to mention the ATL skill category and then the ATL skills cluster. So again, if you're doing research, you mention what research, media literacy, etc. So you discuss them over here. Then you do your prior knowledge of the ATL skill and how did you develop your ATL skills with new knowledge. This is, of course, very important. I know this sounds like criteria C, but it's really not. I don't know why I didn't make this criteria. It's just kind of how it is. You also have to explain the evidences. For example, if you made a to-do list, then, why did you make a to-do list? Do you think it's helping you? Of course, if it helps you, you make a to-do list, right? So this is where you discuss that. Okay, next up, criteria B strand 2. This is how your ATL skill applies to achieve the product goal. You mention the skills category, the skills cluster, and then you talk about how you use the skill in particular to kind of aim at a particular point of the project. So, for example, with mine, right, I had to do a lot of research for understanding health issues, and I also researched a lot of recipes. So that's where I can demonstrate I use research skills to get a better understanding and to enlighten myself about the health conditions and what they can eat, what they can't eat. So I have a better understanding of which recipe to put in. So that is very important. I like how I say that about everything. Like, I'll say something and I'm like, this is very important, because it kind of is. If you don't do it, you're, not gonna get the level 7. And believe me, getting a level 7 in personal project isn't really that hard. If I can do it, I swear anyone can. But we'll discuss a lot of the tips in the next episode. But, just really do it and manage your time well. Make sure it doesn't clash with your exams, the MYP exams, of course. Also, I'm sure your school has a timeline for the project itself. Maybe they want to end the project by, for example, my school, we started in MYP 4 and we ended in MYP 5. It depends on the school, but kind of be 2-3 steps ahead. And I say this because if you're ahead, you're going to save yourself a lot of time towards the end. Because once you're done, then your report by your supervisor and your personal project coordinator is just going to get reviewed, and you're just going to get feedback. And you're just going to tweak some stuff and improve it. So, you'll have a lot of time for the tweaking and changes so that it's the best version of itself it can be. So really do, try to manage your time well with this. Okay, last up, reflecting. Criteria C. Strand 1, you have to revisit your goals, discuss the impact of the learning goal on yourself and others, then discuss the possible impact of the product goal on yourself and others. Then you're going to revisit your prior knowledge. Now, what did you know and what have you learned at the very end of everything? How a variety of knowledge area has increased and how your skills have increased. This is, again, something to keep in mind of. Then you're also going to revisit your ATL skills. You have to mention 2 to 3. You're going to discuss the ATL skills you've developed or further developed and how this has had a positive impact on you as a student. Next up, discuss the quality of the work. Discuss strengths, weaknesses, again, academic or personal, and identify the challenges you faced, how you solved them, the strategies you took, those things. You can also link it with the IB learner profiles. I didn't personally do that. I actually don't remember. I don't think I did. But again, if you want to do that, you can do that as well. Lastly, product evaluation. Now, this includes the surveys or the interviews you did. This could include, like a Google Form screenshot of your peers evaluating it, a supervisor, coordinator evaluating it, or even an expert. Basically, what you're trying to do with this trend is you're trying to evaluate the quality of the product and the outcome by justifying the reasons for the final level awarded. You have to self-assess it, and you can give it points as well. Like for my aesthetics, it was out of 3 out of 5 or something along the lines. And you can also explain changes made again and why you did that. That would be very important. Okay, this I have not discussed before. What you have to do in this report at the very end is write a conclusion. You have to just conclude with a general statement about your growth as a result of the personal project, and like how the personal project has made you a better person, a better learner, and how your product has helped the community or whatever, if you feel it did. So this is basically the end part. No, it does not have an introduction, but it does have a conclusion. A conclusion is like a couple of sentences. You don't really have to make it very long. I would suggest you don't. But yeah, and I think that's all we have today to discuss about. I hope that you guys found this useful. I know this was a bit sped run, or what would be the word? We speed ran this. Okay, I'm just thinking out loud now, but I know we really rushed through this a bit because there was a lot and I didn't want this episode to be too long. But again, I really hope this was useful for you guys. If you have any questions, or if you want to see my own report, you can even DM me and I can send it to you. So you can DM me on Instagram. The account is the IB Odyssey podcast. So feel free to reach out, and do keep an eye out for the second part of the episode, which is, again, the tips and tricks of how to really crack the personal project and make sure it's, you're doing a good job there, because with a particular set of tips and tricks, you can help score better. So again, I hope this episode was useful to have a basic understanding of what you're supposed to do. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good day. Bye bye.